Well, the Challenge Cup is not a tournament that tends to get too much attention, and I must admit, even here on the channel, I don't think I've spoken about it this year, but all of a sudden we get to the end of it, silverware is on the line, and it is an opportunity for Gloucester or the Sharks to redefine their seasons, really. If they end up winning that, welcome back to the channel. I'm going to be looking ahead to that final in this video, reflecting on the semi-finals and asking a couple of questions from Gloucester's point of view. Would winning the Challenge Cup and therefore doing a double of sorts, although I don't put too much credence on the Premiership Cup, but it would be a double, does that mean they would have had a successful season despite being incredibly disappointing in the Premiership? Gloucester fans can let me know in the comments section. And as for the Sharks, what's going on? I don't know how to sum them up. I don't know how to assess them. Packed full of quality players, World Cup winners, but they've also had a pretty disappointing season. So where are they at the moment? The South African fans, those of you in Durban, the Sharks fans, can also let me know. The comment section is where you can do just that. Remember to like the video and remember to make sure you are subscribed to the channel as well. But as I say, welcome back. I want to start off with the Sharks. 4 wins in the URC this season. It's quite interesting to me, actually, that both Gloucester and the Sharks get to the final of this competition having had really underwhelming domestic seasons, which maybe is where the Challenge Cup is. Maybe. It hasn't always been that way. Typically, you would say it's more the teams that are kind of around the middle of a table that aren't quite good enough for the Champions Cup but get an opportunity to compete in the Challenge. But they have both had disappointing seasons. So what is going on? As I said in that little intro, because the Sharks have, 7 Springboks in the team, 7 World Cup winners. You look at the quality they have in there and you feel like they should be more successful than they are, which I think I'm right in saying sums up their history in a way. Compared with some of those other South African teams, they've never quite been able to be as successful, despite the fact that they've got good financial backing, that they've got some really good players in there as well. They have a good squad. Is it to do with the strength and depth of the squad? When you scratch below some of those World Cup winners, do they not have the depth of some of the other teams? I don't know. I'm intrigued. And the other thing, just to throw in, I didn't know whether this would be the case really, but a World Cup hangover, obviously the Springboks being delayed to get back into that team. I think the first 9 games in the URC, they won 1 of them. So maybe that's a factor. And that would make sense to a degree because they've had a little bit of a renaissance in this part of the season with the run in the Challenge Cup. They have won a couple of more games in the URC in the latter part of the season as well. So I don't know, maybe that is part of it. But to me, it just doesn't quite add up when I look at the Sharks squad, the Sharks team, and the season that they have had. But they are in the final off the back of a brilliant comeback in that semi-final at the Stoop against Clermont. They looked dead and buried, and they come back into it to win it by a point, which is becoming a staple of South Africa now. South African sides in knockout rugby winning the match by a point when you feel like they probably shouldn't, but they somehow get themselves over the line. And that game at the Stoop, by the way, was basically a home game for them, wasn't it? I know there's loads of South Africans in London. I think that's part of the reason that we often see the Boks now playing games at Twickenham. They've got their game against Wales coming up in a few months, which I think 50,000 tickets have already been sold for. It will get close to a sellout, I would have thought. So it's a good location. If you're not able to play it in Durban, it's a good location to be able to have it, I think, in London, because they were well supported and they got the job done and it looked like a great occasion at the Stoop on Saturday, and they go into the final. The final thing I'll say actually on the Sharks as well, and I've spoken about this a lot in the Champions Cup, but I think is also relevant for the Challenge, is the significance of a South African side winning it. And I know there's issues with the South African sides being involved in the competitions in the first place. The reality is they are in them and they aren't going anywhere. It's not going to change. With the Sharks winning it, getting that piece of silverware, something the other South African sides haven't been able to do, would it help boost the appetite for the competition in South Africa? Help to engage in it a little bit more? That again is something why I think it's a good thing that they've got to the final. But let's get on to Gloucester and then I'll have a few final words on the final itself at the end of the video. So is the double a success? Gloucester have had a terrible Premiership season. I don't think there is any getting away from that. They won the Premiership Cup and they're now in the final of the Challenge Cup. And George Skivington, their director of rugby himself, has said that around the time of the Six Nations break, they reevaluated it, and I think the players themselves said they really wanted to go for the double. They would prioritise the cup competitions because they weren't going to get top 4 in the Premiership. They were above Newcastle, but they were a fair way off everyone else. They were 9th. They are 9th in the table. They will finish 9th in the table. They prioritised the cups, and it's been a success for them. So I give them a lot of credit in that regard for being able to rewrite some of the script on their season. But in regards to the question is the double a success, for me, it's probably somewhere in between. As I said at the top of the video, the Challenge Cup is a funny competition because for a lot of it, no, people aren't that bothered about it. That is the reality. Some clubs aren't bothered about it. The media doesn't particularly cover it. Even the fans, I think, are far less engaged than they would be, say, in the Champions Cup. But you get to the final, and that is a significant piece of silverware. Speaking as a Bristol fan, a couple of years ago when Bristol won it, that was a massively monumental moment in the history of that club. For a club that has never had major success, to be able to win the Challenge Cup, it was a shame it was in COVID because it meant the fans couldn't really be there and enjoy it and appreciate it or have the celebrations around it that I think they would otherwise have. But it was a significant moment. This would be a really important bit of silverware for Gloucester as a club. However, and the reason I'm somewhere in between, for me, you can't get away from the success that your bread and butter in the Premiership, week in, week out, they have under-delivered, which is part of a wider issue, I think, for Gloucester as a club. If you look at recent history, they haven't been that significant in the Premiership. I know they had that year where they finished 5th. Was that post-COVID, or was it last year? Anyway, they've had moments where you think they could be a team that break into the top 4 without being able to do so. They've had very few playoff appearances. And they generally are kind of middle to lower parts of the Premiership table. And that, for me, is an issue and something they have to correct. I guess what they would argue is that if they can get this win in the Challenge Cup, combine it with the Premiership Cup, it gives them the belief that actually they are capable of beating some of the top teams. It's just being able to do it on a consistent basis. Maybe it can give them a platform to build forward heading into next season and beyond. So I'm intrigued by what Gloucester fans make of it. I think you absolutely deserve that moment against Benetton at Kingsholm, by the way, in that semi-final. And finally, something to really cheer and enjoy. And I hope as well that the fans pack out the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium at the end of this month, because I think it will be a great final for the various different things I speak about in this video of two sides that haven't had good seasons. But it all comes down to this. And whoever wins, I think it changes the complexion of the year. Whoever loses, it reinforces how disappointing a campaign it has been. I had a quick look this morning. There are still a lot of tickets available, by the way, for the Challenge Cup final. So I'm sure Gloucester fans, really well-supported club in a heartland of English rugby, will get their tickets and will get there. And I'm sure plenty of South Africans, as I say, living in the UK, will get there. But if you haven't got it yet, if you are able to get to the game, do get your ticket. I really hope it's a well-attended final. I hope it's close to a sellout. But as I say, there were loads of tickets available when I looked this morning. So make sure you snap them up. So let me know what you make of it. Sharks fans, what's going on? What's going on with that team and potentially underdeveloping or under-delivering, I should say? Or am I being unfair? You can let me know as well. And Gloucester fans, does the double make this a successful season? I don't think I would go quite that far. I think it's somewhere in the middle because I can't ignore the Premiership form. But maybe you'll say, do you know what? Given where you were at one point, losing 9 games in a row or whatever, winning the Challenge Cup at the end of it, plus you got the Premiership Cup there as well, is pretty good going. I look forward to reading your comments. I appreciate you watching the video. And a final reminder, like the video, put a thumbs up on it and subscribe to the channel as well. I'd really appreciate that. Have a great day. Enjoy whatever you're doing. I'll see you in the next one.